everybody. I'm here with a few of my friends and CFT colleagues from the United States and from Europe. So I'm here with Chia-Ying Chou, Fraser and Isabelle Leboeuf to talk about an exciting new program that they have coming up about anger, power, and love, and responding to these with compassion and understanding them through the lens of compassion. So I'm really interested to hear from them about their perspectives on this and what they'll be offering. Chia-Ying is a psychologist in San Francisco who specializes in CFT for hoarding disorder. Chris, although he sees a wide variety of people, specializes in compassion-focused interventions with children and adolescents. And Isabelle is in France, joining us from Paris, France, where she spends a lot of time helping people using compassion-focused therapy and talking about issues such as love and anger. So welcome all of you. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you for
so I'm just wondering if one of you could tell me a little bit about this program. I know that you're offering it for the general public, not specifically for therapists. And I'm wondering if you might just tell me why you felt it was important to make this offering available just to everybody who might be interested out there.
Well, Chia-Ying, do you want to begin telling the story?
Okay.
This is Chia-Ying's brainchild.
Okay.
Our synergy. So
Okay. So when you say telling the story, that reminds me of our first discussion of, so Chris and I, one day we were chatting and then we were saying how both of us, we have sometimes find being angry or being in touch with our anger is very hard. And how sometimes that not being able to not even sense that we are angry and not being able to acknowledge that we are angry, that kind of like makes us become blurry of where our boundaries are. Because when we are angry, that's when we can be informed, hey, our boundaries are crossed. And so when we are not able to be in touch with our anger, that makes us kind of like lose our boundaries, or we are not being able to embody our power or our strength. And so from that conversation, we're thinking, wow, how important that this emotion anger is, that we need it to know our boundaries and to embody our anger. And we also need to embody those things to be able to have more authentic relationships and to be really saying that we can love, meaning we can let people in. We can also let people know, hey, that's too much in, and we can collaborate and we can communicate authentically to create more love and intimacy. And so that's where we started to think, oh, we need to work on this. When a lot of times people are saying we need to control your anger, we need to manage your anger. For some people though, that not being able to control their anger is a consequence of not being able to have a good relationship with their anger. And so whenever it comes out, it just bursts out. Yeah, so that's I think is the beginning of us starting to think about this. And then we thought Isabelle to us, she is kind of like a strong presence and a very symbolic of strength and justice. And so we thought we want to learn from her and with her. And so here we are.
And
that sounds wonderful.
And Isabelle, at a time when I was struggling, she asked me, she said, Chris, how are you feeling? And I had this realization after a difficult moment I'd had, and this was in person. And I said, I'm angry. And she goes, yeah. And I didn't even realize. And it was such a revelation for me. And then I was like, oh, it's okay. And now what can I do with this? But if I couldn't identify it. And so for Chia-Ying and I, for even to identify it, and that was a journey that it really set us on. And so then we reached out to Isabelle, and then Isabelle, would you like to share a little bit about as you come into this work with us, the story,
Thank you so much for these kind words. I can share my emotion when you two talked about this workshop to me. I had this feeling of these two open-hearted friends, and I had really this feeling of getting together and creating a space. And I think it's so easy to work with the two of you to create this space, and that really was my feeling. And I thought, well, if we can create this beautiful space of dialogue, of communication, and I think that that would be a safe place for people to join us and to create this workshop as a welcoming space. That was really my feeling when you talked about this workshop.
Mm. Yeah, and it's so interesting, Isabelle, when I hear like Chris and Chia-Ying talking about not being in touch with, not recognizing their emotion as anger when it's happening. And we obviously get so many messages when we're young and when we're growing up about anger, its acceptability, how it's okay to express it. You know, go to your room and when you're calm, come out and we'll talk about this. Or if our experience of anger is one of threat, you know, think of a child growing up with an abusive parent who can be very kind, nice, and seem very loving, and then very unpredictably become very angry and violent. And so then, of course, they want to stay away from anger. So we have all these reasons we're taught to stay away from anger and to not have that part of ourselves be well integrated.
Right.
And as you all know, one of the goals of CFT is we want to have all the parts of ourselves well integrated and have a voice, have a seat at the table. So I'm curious how you will take people through this course, talking to them about their anger and how we can respond to anger in a different way, and even how we can start to have that sensitivity to knowing that we might be feeling anger when we're not identifying it as that.
I think it's very interesting, your question about the link between trauma and anger in both directions, because at the same time, anger is really an emotion of protection. If I talk about myself, I often think about my anger as dragons. And they often stand on my anxiety. They try to protect my inner little town where people are living inside, and the dragons are here and trying to keep everyone safe. And at the same time, it's really an emotion that has a lot to say about our motivation and what the context means. But it also can create a form of trauma in the sense of separateness. It separates me from the others. And so that's really the dynamic of trauma. That can be the dynamic of trauma. And as you just said, it can also separate us on the inside, because we don't want these dragons. They are so dangerous to ourselves and to others. So we can also be separated from this part of us. So I think that's where it's important to talk about connection. We all have this motivation to connect with others that can take the form of love. We can have this motivation to interact with others. And at the same time, this desire can be met with fears. We can be afraid and want to close the doors of our little town and say, oh, the others stay outside. And the inner conflict can raise many emotions, many anger, and also be a source of separateness and trauma. So the path we are trying to take, I think, together is a path of reconnection through the anger being the point of recognizing that there is something happening inside of us.
Mm. Yeah, and so the anger could be a fear or an inhibitor to experiencing love, to feeling that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can be in that sense, and it can also be a source of trauma in history and inside of us.
Yeah, it's interesting because we all desire that, to be close to be connected, to be cared for, to be safe and protected. And yeah, we all want that, definitely. Now, let me ask you, so we talked a little bit about love and anger, but the other word that's in the title of your workshop is power. So often in CFT, we talk about we're trying to shift people from a very competitive mindset into more of a cooperative mindset. And that's sort of how I think of using power in a way that I'd like to see it used and not. But I'm wondering if that's what you guys are thinking about when you're talking about power in this workshop. Are you thinking about how we can like express, you know, a caring sort of balanced power, or is there another idea that you're getting at with the workshop?
I can speak about that. So there's also very much misunderstanding and even fear of the word power. Sometimes when I talk to clients about embracing your power, especially clients who have been traumatized before when they are victims of other people's abuse of their power. So the abuse of power is more experienced, especially in a more traumatized population. So power is a dirty word. Power means aggression, power means violence. Yeah, and so that is something that we also would like to kind of clarify in our workshop, and also most importantly clarify in the relationship in each participant's relationship with their own power. Because if you imagine, if one sees power as a bad thing, it's violence, you're a bad person if you have power, then they are gonna give away their power. They're gonna say, no, oh, everything is fine, when it's not fine. And so the kind of power we are talking about here is almost it's self-honesty, self-acceptance, that I have this power in me, that I know my boundary, and I know what I want, and I am gonna give what I can give. Because to be able to give, you also need power. To be able to really give, rather than giving out of people-pleasing kind of place, you need to own things in you. You need to be like have a strong core in you to be able to really give, rather than giving out of something like kind of a string attached to your giving. So it's that kind of power, like if you see a tree, that they are really standing tall, rather than something that's trying to attack. Yeah.
It is interesting because we often avoid that word power. I do think you're right that it has connotations for us. We think of power as being associated with control. So I think, yeah, we often use words like courage and strength instead because they don't have that same. But yeah, it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is talking to people about having parts integrated, but also having the healthy boundaries you were talking about earlier, that the anger can be something that can put up that fence to provide a feeling of safeness and protection when you need it, that the power can be something that helps you keep that in place, that the love is more about when do you allow like a healthy connectedness. You're not, you know, craving something so much that you're doing things that are foolish to try to get caring, but you know, you're getting the caring that you need. So it sounds like a lot of it's about boundaries and healthy boundaries and strengths and getting what we need in relationship.
Yeah, coming back to authenticity. So when we are not dwelling in our power, then we don't let people in because we are afraid of getting hurt, or we let people in too much, and then we get angry later on.
Yeah.
Something you would like to add, Chris?
Oh, I was just giving you a thumbs up, man. If I had a lighter back in the old days, you know, now with they hold phones, I'd like, yeah, Chia-Ying.
Yeah, I guess Chris, you alluded to it in an email you sent me where, or I think maybe it was actually in the description of your workshop where you're talking about how sometimes if we become angry, then we can find our anger coming out in subtle ways, right? Sort of like we can notice like some passive aggressive tendencies coming out in us because we're not really owning our anger, but it's there. And as Chia-Ying sort of intimated, it can build into resentments if we have anger that we don't address, and just not healthy for us.
Yeah, I just really, that's great that you mentioned that, because, like being able to turn towards, in compassion focused therapy, what do we want to teach you is like, how do we turn towards, suffering, and then knowing what to do about it. So noticing when it comes up with you, and then not, because a lot of, we can either become really aggressive and act on our anger, which is very typical, or if depending on our history, many of us might get really anxious and shut it down. And then like Greg said, then we're sort of passive aggressive and say, yeah, ice cream's fine, but I really wanted cheese. Yeah, but you wanted ice cream, so yeah, damn it, and but how to find that turning towards and learning to listen to anger, be able to like not, but find that place of assertion and courage and power within that, to not be burnt by the flames, but of the dragon, but to be able to, like Mahatma Gandhi's grandson wrote a book called Riding the Dragon. We want to ride the dragon. We don't want to slay the dragon. The dragon has wisdom. It can take you places, but without skill, without practice, that's part of, we wanted to give these skills out, because we're very fortunate, the four of us, to have this. But to know, because we can feel very shameful about our anger, or very shameful about being submissive and weak. But how do we find that sweet spot, in between? Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response is a space. And in that space, you find your freedom and power to choose. That compassionate place with whatever will come showing up, what in the moment, what is. And we want to coach you. What can we do? Regardless of our relationship with him, what can we do so we can be better in our relationships and our people, interactions with people in our community, and especially within ourselves. So thank you, Greg, for bringing that up, because that's so important.
Yes.
Now, when I think about anger and thinking about it therapeutically, another thing I think about is that often clients will come to me having learned about this idea of anger as a secondary emotion, right? And that I know Paul Gilbert, the founder of CFT, will talk about this process of reciprocal inhibition, where sometimes we'll slip into anger because it uses some of the same brain systems that we might use for anxiety or sadness, and it can feel better to us than anxiety or sadness. I mean, I know I don't like to feel sadness. I'd rather feel the power of a little bit of righteous anger than the sadness. And anxiety certainly has an energy, but it's a very unsettled energy, right? Not the same as the power of anger. So then what about that idea that, I think clients then sometimes get confused and think that like, oh, anger is always the secondary emotion. And I tell them, no, I think anger sometimes is exactly what you need to be feeling. And we need to think about how do you want to express it from a compassionate motivation. But what about this idea that sometimes there can be other things behind the anger or mixed in with the anger, if you're thinking about, the multi-mind that we talk about in CFT? Does anybody have any comments about that, about how we just sort of see our anger clearly for what it is, but also the other emotions might be mixed in with it and behind it?
Maybe I can share my own experience about one exercise that is very typical of CFT, is the multi-self exercise, where we make space and room for each emotion that we may experience in a situation. And often Paul uses a situation, Paul Gilbert uses a situation of conflict to emerge more, to allow more emotions. And when I did this exercise, the last time I did it, I realized that under my dragons, there was this huge wall, really, like a middle-aged wall. And and that's really my anxiety, and I could really visualize that there was something under this anger that I experienced, but it's really an emotion that most of the time I don't experience. I don't even feel it. I used to say that I run faster than my anxiety. That I just go before that. I just have these inside inner strategies that I'm not really aware of, but that allow me to not feel it. I guess it's as you said, Greg, a lot less comfortable to be anxious than to be angry. But it's also my history and many things that come along. And so, yes, I think this workshop is definitely a place to welcome anger, both as primary emotion and secondary emotion, definitely.
Yeah, I just wanted to tie what Isabelle said and what Chris just said about how compassion-focused therapy, especially the piece about leaning toward or looking at something that's difficult. That's very important part about the compassion practice and how that's related to what Isabelle is talking about. Because a lot of times when on the surface level, we experience anger, and if we say anger is bad, and I'm angry with me being angry, and we either suppress it or we are angry with it, with like add oil to fire or gasoline to fire. So we even become more angry and we still don't know what's underneath. Or we run away from it, we suppress it, and we then don't know what's underneath. So what we need to learn and what we would hope to share in this workshop is to learn skills from CFT practices to help us lean toward suffering. How can we ground ourselves so that we don't have to be afraid of anger, so we can stay there long enough to explore what's underneath or what's around it or what it's about.
Yeah, I think that's very consistent with a lot of the mindfulness and Buddhist understanding that underlies CFT. If we don't spend the time to look at something and see its components clearly, then how can we effectively gauge how to respond to it? So to take the time and have that courage to stay with the things that are difficult, whether it's anxiety, anger, or sadness, yeah, it's important to stay with them, see what they have to say to us, what would be important. And I like, Chia-Ying, you started to get there into the a little bit about what people might expect. I'm wondering, I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm wondering if you guys could share with me a little bit of a roadmap so that people who might be considering coming to this workshop might have an idea like, oh, we're going to learn about these certain things that might help with all of the things we've been talking about.
Well, Greg, the first thing I would even say, the mind, you know, is a bad neighborhood. Don't go in there alone. You know, this is a community of the three of us, but also joining together. And we know as human beings, you know, we're all stronger together. You know, misery loves company, but only the right company is the best antidote for misery. So joining together, just to begin, that when you join us, you will be joined in a safe place to be able to go deal with some of these difficult things that are very hard to talk about in sometimes our own interpersonal lives or our circles. But that will be it. When people come, this will be a safe place. And building upon that, then we will, I don't want to steal the thunder from everybody, but then we'll build into a layered sort of, you know, well, I don't even want to call it curriculum because I'll scare you away, make it sound like it's school or something. Kids are heading back to school, and the last thing you want to hear is curriculum. But Chia-Ying or Isabelle, I decided to say that first, but then we based on that motto, we have a step down because we're not going to throw you into the deep water and say, swim, good luck, feel your anger. Yeah, no, we put we'll build safeness. We're together. We're going to build this, and then building upon skills to strengthen you. So, but I thought I'd say that, just jump out and say that up front. Chia-Ying, you want to?
Yeah, that's very important. Thank you for sharing that very important foundation, Chris. Yeah, and to build with that foundation, and the one of the first thing after that foundation is safely built, we are going to go through some kind of like somatic exercises for us to be in touch with how anger tastes like how does it taste in our body, how does it taste in our mind, and what kind of feelings are associated. Oh, my stomach is tightening up when I'm, and does it mean that, so that when we are able to be sensitive to those bodily cues, we can ask ourselves, oh, that seems familiar, am I angry? Oh, what's going on inside me? Yeah, and so that's kind of like the next step from that safe place. And then we'll do something that Isabelle mentioned a little bit earlier on about the multiple selves, and we will have some time to explore what sorts of other emotions are also around anger, and we get to know them. Yeah, and then we build some skills for people to know how to facilitate the conversation between their internal family members, if you will, different parts of ourselves. Yeah.
And it's sort of unpacking this untold story that with some of this wisdom. And so it'll be we'll be doing a lot of experiential kind of stuff. So it won't be just looking at slides on the screen. Because, for me, I want to, know what to do. In order to know what to do, we have to have some understanding. So it gives some basic understanding. Oh, that makes sense. That's why my body and mind does this. And then we're going to walk you down. So Isabelle, it looked like I know you. I saw your eyes when Chang was. There were some pieces there that you might have wanted to add in. Was there something I saw you a little glint light up?
You're such a good observer. I'm always amazed by how you look at things. What came to mind too is that really interpersonal relationships are complex. They will still be at the end of the workshop. There will still be many emotions, anger, but many others also. But I think what we can expect from this workshop is to create a space to see more clearly those emotions, to welcome anger, and to open a space of choice, like watching all the colors to create a painting and really learn to know these colors, play with them, and feel more freedom to relate to all our inner humanity. That's hoping.
That sounds wonderful. So it sounds like it really is an approach of giving people some basic understanding at the beginning of the workshops and helping them do exercises that evoke a feeling of safeness, and then edging into experiencing and feeling, seeing clearly different emotions, including anger, as you go. And then that later on creates more choice as far as responsiveness. And I know all of these people are going to be in very good hands, because I know the three of you, and I know that creating an environment of safeness and caring and connectedness is something that you will all be able to do really well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah, it's been so nice to talk to the three of you. We better say goodbye for today, but I will look forward to hearing all about your adventures in the workshop.